India has 1.4 billion people, and nearly half the men share a single Y chromosome lineage. That lineage didn't originate in India. It came from the grasslands of Central Asia roughly 4,000 years ago. Geneticists call it the most dramatic sex-biased replacement event documented outside the Americas. The men's DNA says one thing. The women's DNA says something completely different. Two genetic histories in one population. And they contradict each other completely. And when it arrived, it replaced nearly every male lineage that existed before it. The women's lineages survived. The maternal DNA of modern India is overwhelmingly local, ancient, indigenous. But the men's DNA tells a completely different story. One of the most extreme sex-biased replacements in history. The proof came from ancient DNA extracted from skeletons, spanning 3,000 years of Indian history. Before the transition, Indian male lineages were diverse. After it, one lineage dominated everything. The mothers stayed. The fathers were replaced. And the DNA proves it happened in under 1,000 years. The transformation was invisible to archaeologists for decades. Only DNA could see what happened. Two teeth, 1,500 years apart, same land, completely different paternal ancestry. India's story, before the replacement, begins with one of the greatest civilizations in human history. At its peak, around 2500 BCE, the Harappan civilization was the largest urban culture on Earth. 5 million people, over 1,000 settlements, planned cities with running water and sewage systems 2,000 years before Rome. Their script remains undeciphered. Their religion is unknown. But their engineering was extraordinary. Every house had its own bathroom connected to a city-wide sewage system. 2,000 years before Roman plumbing. Their standardized weights were so precise that trade across 500,000 square kilometers used the same measurement system. No other Bronze Age civilization achieved this level of urban planning. And we still can't read their writing. And then, around 1900 BCE, the cities began to decline. Populations dispersed. The great urban centers were abandoned. The abandonment was gradual. Over centuries, the great cities emptied. People moved east and south. By 1300 BCE, the Harappan urban system was gone, replaced by smaller, rural settlements. The greatest civilization in the Bronze Age world didn't fall to an army. It dispersed. And then new people arrived. For decades, historians blamed drought, river shifts, or internal collapse. DNA added a completely new factor. In 2019, two landmark studies published months apart transformed the picture. Narasimhan and colleagues tested over 500 ancient individuals from Central and South Asia. Shinde's team sequenced DNA from the Indus Valley site of Rakhigarhi. Together, these studies created the most comprehensive genetic map of ancient South Asia ever assembled. And the map showed something that nobody in Indian archaeology had fully anticipated. The Indus Valley individuals had no detectable steppe ancestry, zero. Their genomes were a mix of ancient Iranian, related, and South Asian hunter-gatherer ancestry. But individuals from later periods, after roughly 1500 BCE, showed a massive influx of steppe-related ancestry. The steppe component appeared suddenly, not gradually, not through slow trade contacts. It arrived as a wave. The genetic shift was abrupt. In one generation of burials, the steppe signal was absent. In the next, it dominated. The speed of the genetic turnover suggested a large-scale migration, not gradual gene flow through trade. Trade doesn't change your Y chromosomes. Migration does. And this was migration on a massive scale. And the wave was overwhelmingly male. The Y chromosomes told a story the autosomes couldn't. The people who carried steppe ancestry into India were descendants of the Sintashta culture. The Sintashta emerged around 2100 BCE on the southern Ural steppe. The first chariot builders. They carried bronze weapons, horse-drawn chariots, and a language that would become Sanskrit. The Sintashta toolkit was designed for mounted warfare, spears, axes, and the first known compound bows. The language they spoke was Proto-Indu, Iranian, the ancestor of both Sanskrit and Old Persian. The language of the Vedas didn't originate in India. It was carried there on horseback from the steppe. Their Y chromosome haplogroup was R1A, specifically the Z93 subclade. This marker became the genetic signature of the migration. Before the steppe migration, R1AZ93 was absent from the Indian subcontinent. After it, the lineage became the single most common Y chromosome in the region. Sample after sample from the post-migration period showed the same result, R1AZ93. The steppe marker. The frequency increase was one of the steepest documented for any Y chromosome lineage anywhere in the world. The geographic distribution was not random. It followed a clear social gradient. One male lineage went from 0 to nearly 50% of the male population. In roughly 1,000 years, the pre-migration Indian male lineages, haplogroups H, L, and J2, didn't disappear entirely, but they were dramatically reduced. In upper caste populations of northern India, R1 of frequencies reached 70 to 80%. The indigenous male lineages were nearly eliminated. The higher the caste, the more steppe DNA. That correlation is the most controversial finding. The data showed a gradient. Brahmins carry the highest steppe ancestry. Tribal populations carry the least. The genetic hierarchy mapped almost perfectly onto the social hierarchy. The implications were explosive. The social structure that formed 4,000 years ago remains one of the most enduring institutions in human history. Marriage rules still vary dramatically by caste and region. In many communities, marrying outside your group remains rare. Geneticists can identify caste membership from DNA alone with remarkable accuracy. The boundaries are that sharp. Your genome carries your caste, not biology. 4,000 years of marrying within the group. DNA was saying that the caste system had a genetic foundation, and that foundation came from outside India. The political reaction was immediate and fierce. Whether the Aryans migrated into India or originated there has been debated for over a century. The out-of-India hypothesis, supported by Hindu nationalist scholars, argued that Vedic civilization originated in India and spread outward. The ancient DNA evidence contradicted that hypothesis directly. The debate became politically charged. National identity and scientific evidence collided head-on. Media coverage in India was intense. The findings touched on questions of national origin and cultural pride. The steppe ancestry in Indian genomes wasn't there before 2000 BCE. It arrived. The DNA is unambiguous. The Rakhigarhi individual, the first genome from an actual Indus Valley civilization site, confirmed it. No steppe ancestry in the Harappan genome. The person who lived in one of the world's greatest cities carried DNA that was entirely local. The civilization that built planned cities and invented standardized weights had no genetic connection to the steppe populations that would later dominate the region. The Rakhigarhi genome was extracted from a woman buried at the site roughly 4,500 years ago. Her genome was the smoking gun. The Indus Valley people were genetically distinct from the population that replaced them. One skeleton from one of humanity's greatest cities, and not a trace of the ancestry that would dominate the region. The builders of the Indus Valley civilization were not the ancestors of the Vedic culture. They were replaced by them. The mechanism of replacement is where the story becomes most disturbing. The steppe ancestry shows an extreme sex bias. Y chromosomes are steppe-derived. Mitochondrial DNA is indigenous. 80% of Indian mitochondrial DNA is indigenous. Roughly 50% of male Y DNA is steppe-derived. Steppe men married local women. The local men's lineages were cut off, generation after generation. The incoming steppe pastoralists brought horses, bronze weapons, and a patrilineal social system. Horses transformed warfare and mobility. No indigenous Indian civilization had domesticated them. Horse bones appear in Indian archaeological sites only after the steppe migration. Before that, the horse was unknown on the subcontinent. The steppe migrants were pastoralists first and warriors second. Their economy was built on cattle. Isotope analysis shows a dramatic dietary shift at the transition. More dairy, more animal protein. A pastoral economy replacing an agricultural one. Cattle were wealth. Horses were power. The steppe migrants had both. The Harappan descendants had neither. Their social structure was patriarchal. Inheritance, status, and identity passed through the male line. Women married into the husband's group. This pattern explains the sex bias. Incoming men kept their Y chromosomes. Local women's mitochondrial DNA survived, but the local men's Y chromosomes were progressively eliminated from the gene pool, not through violence necessarily, through reproductive competition. If steppe men had more wives and more surviving children, the math alone would erase the local male lineages. Population models show that even modest reproductive advantages, sustained over 30 to 40 generations, can produce near total Y chromosome replacement. The simulation shows it clearly. No violence needed, just differential reproduction sustained over centuries. A 5% reproductive advantage per generation is enough. Over 40 generations, it approaches fixation. 5% more children per generation. That's all it takes. 40 generations later, one lineage dominates. The replacement didn't require genocide. It required status. Steppe men held social power. Social power translated into reproductive success. The caste system may have been the mechanism. Status determined who reproduced most successfully. The earliest Vedic texts describe a world already divided. Priests at the top, laborers at the bottom. The social hierarchy described in texts written 3,000 years ago is still readable in DNA today. Endogamy locked the genetic structure in place. Once the boundaries formed, they barely moved. The connection between steppe ancestry and the caste system remains the study's most sensitive finding. The Rig Veda, the oldest Vedic text composed in Sanskrit, describes a fourfold social division: priests, warriors, merchants, and laborers. The genetic data shows that this social stratification had biological consequences. Endogamy, marrying within your group, locked the genetic signatures in place. Once the caste boundaries hardened, genetic mixing between groups slowed dramatically. Some caste groups have been genetically isolated for roughly 70 generations. Nearly 2,000 years of marrying only within the group. The caste system didn't just organize society. It froze the genetic consequences of the steppe migration in place. Steppe men who arrived 4,000 years ago left a signature that endogamy preserved almost intact. In populations where endogamy was strict, the R1 of frequency has barely changed in 4,000 years. The genetic clock stopped. The migration ended millennia ago, but the genetic structure it created is still visible in every Indian genome today. Modern Indians carry the legacy of two populations that merged asymmetrically: steppe fathers, indigenous mothers. Among the most extreme sex-biased admixture events documented anywhere in the world. That was the language the researchers used. Not the largest migration, not the most violent, but the most genetically lopsided. New studies continue to add detail. Each tested population reveals another layer of the same pattern. Over 40 distinct caste and tribal groups have been genetically profiled. The pattern holds in everyone. 4,000 years of history, written in the Y chromosomes of 1 billion living people. The broader implications extend beyond India. Sex-biased population replacement is not unique to India. The pattern appears on every continent where ancient DNA has been tested in sufficient depth. What makes the Indian case unique is the scale and the social mechanism that preserved the result for 4 millennia. Other replacements faded through intermarriage. India's caste system kept the structure frozen. In Europe, the Yamnaya expansion produced a similar pattern. Steppe male lineages replaced local ones, while female lineages showed more continuity. In the Americas, after contact, European Y chromosomes dominate, while indigenous mitochondrial DNA persists. The pattern repeats everywhere. Incoming men, local women. The Y chromosomes change. The mitochondrial DNA stays. India's case is remarkable, not because the pattern is unique, but because the magnitude is extreme and the social structure that preserved it, the caste system, kept it frozen in place. And the data is still coming in. Each new study adds resolution to the picture. Thousands of Indian archaeological sites remain unsampled. The Rakhigarhi genome was the first and so far only individual sequenced from the entire Indus Valley civilization. One genome from a civilization of 5 million people. We have barely begun to read it. Ancient DNA from Indus Valley sites could reveal when the mixing began and how fast it spread. One site sampled out of over 1,000 known. The genetic history of one of humanity's greatest civilizations is almost entirely unread, the biggest archaeological blank spot in human genetics. And it's sitting in the most populated region on Earth. Every unexcavated site is a potential library of ancient DNA, and India has thousands of them. The picture will become clearer with every new genome, but the broad pattern is already established. The men were replaced, the women survived, and the social system locked it all in place for 4,000 years. Modern India carries the genetic memory of that transformation in every generation born today. 1.4 billion people, each carrying a genome shaped by events that happened 4,000 years ago. As consumer genetics testing spreads across India, millions are discovering their own steppe ancestry for the first time. The past isn't buried. It's in the saliva of everyone who takes a DNA test today. If you want to know what else ancient DNA has revealed about who replaced whom, subscribe. The evidence keeps arriving. What other civilizations were overwritten by people whose descendants still live on the same land? How many other Y chromosome replacements are waiting to be discovered? Sources and references are in the description below.